Alright, I already put the spark plug in on the other side. I just brought you back for this side here. Alright, that's that spark plug. I guess a good idea would be the Kickstarter now. Alright, so we have the Kickstarter going in. I think go a little more forward like that. I think a little more back. Seemed to me it was kind of tough to kickstart the bike with the Kickstarter too far forward. Couldn't get leverage on it. So we're going to do that. Put it in there. And that's on there tight. Alright. I believe the bike is in gear, but I'd like to hear it with spark plugs in it. See how it's sounding right now. Think that's neutral. Definitely sounds like it's got good compression. Alright, I think the next thing will be ignition and coil and so on. So I'll have to get all that stuff together, bring it back. So we're going to go ahead and throw in the ignition here. The downside is right now I don't have all the proper screws. The ones that I do have are pretty shabby. So I will... And that's the problem with a basket case bike. Having all the screws and everything you need can be a challenge. Because the bike didn't have everything with it. Well, it did, but the screws that are available for it have been used over the years. So I tried to get as many new things as I could, tried to anticipate what I would need, and of course you don't cover everything, but none of this stuff can't be readdressed. They're not bad though. So I'm just going to fit this loosely in place. I'm not going to crank down on it and tighten it up because I still need to deal with all the wiring in the headlight bucket, and not only that, but I also need to get the coil in and a few other things. I need to get the exhaust on. Still not done. Won't be finished today, that's for sure. Would be nice to have it finished today, but it will not be. We'll throw the points cover on just to have it in place for now, and then we'll come back and take it off when we get everything else addressed and we're ready to time the motor. But right now, we're far away from being ready to time the motor, so just put it on there loosely until we get to that point. It'll be one of the last things we do. Still need to get the gas tank on and fuel and everything else, but we're getting down to the wire here. So you can see the screw that I'm putting in right now. That one's pretty shabby. This other one's really nice, but I only have one of those. So that will be that. So that's the side cover for the points on. So again, this coil is old. It did work on the bike, so we're going to use it for now, but we're eventually going to replace it. I think the eventual plan will be to put on an electronic ignition on this bike. But for now, the coil will have to do. Well, it'll have a coil otherwise, but the points will have to do. Condenser around here. Untangle this mess. Run that down through here. There we go. And I believe that one goes to that side. And this one is for this side. I think I need to put the condenser up here as well. Condenser actually goes through a capture nut here at the base of the frame, so I won't worry about that yet. I'll just go ahead and bolt down the coil. Okay, that's the coil. Alright, so this bike never had the air filters before when we got it. I got a set here now. Hopefully they are the right ones. Not the best of filters, but they are clean. But they definitely show some age. Just want to fit them up and see how they go on the bike. Okay, so it looks like what needs to happen is the brake cable is the negative cable is kind of in the way, and I need to take off the top bolt of the toolbox because that's where it mounts to. So let me get on that. Okay, so that's the lower nut. It's actually finally starting to cool off a little bit. I think I'm about 95 degrees now. That one. Let me find another one for that top one. The extension on it. See if we can get it started here. And I believe we did. So let's go and run it down. that is that. And we'll make sure we can tighten up the clamp down here. There we go. Get it in position. Alright, so that is that. The air cleaner's on. Now let's see, what do you say we throw a side cover on this side? A little drop will do you. Alright, so that is the side cover on. That is one tight fit with that clutch cable, I'll tell you. That down where it belongs. Alright. See, what else can we do here? I know I need to put the condenser up in there still. Connect some wires. Just trying to think of what else I need to hook up. I know I need to put the ignition switch on still. Again, I'm going to deal with electrical last. Let's move around to the other side and we'll do the other side. Air cleaner and side cover. Just hooking up the battery here. What I really need to do is do everything. Okay, you guys, we're going to go ahead and put in the exhaust studs now. Again, studs only need a little bit of pressure. They don't need a ton. 3 or 4 pounds for these size studs is about right. Alright, that's the studs for that side. I'll move over to the other side and get those. All I'm doing is just lubing these studs so they have a fighting chance of coming off later. You could use some anti-seize on them. I haven't had any problem with just using a light oil. But anti-seize is probably the preferable method. And when you tighten these up, you want to use the outer nut. When you loosen them, you want to hold the outer nut and then loosen the inner one in the direction of tightening. And that way it doesn't back out on you. So if you try to undo it by the outer nut, it will tend to back out on you if you don't capture it well. So hold the outer, tighten the inner one. Not real tight, but probably about 5-6 pounds. A little more than you'll need to actually tighten the stud. Doesn't have to be crazy tight, but if it starts spinning on you, then give it a little bit more. Like that one's starting to spin on me a little bit. So I'll just give it a tad more so I can finish tightening down the stud. And there we go. And so again, hold the outer and loosen the inner. Just both come right off. Okay. Got a couple of exhaust collars here. Cleaned up, ready to go. And then these are the collars to hold the pipe. So now I'm just looking for the exhaust gaskets or copper rings that go in there. I have an old pair right here. They're pretty tarnished, but they've just been sitting around in a box for years, and here's a newer one. But I actually have a couple of brand new ones in here somewhere. Just a matter of finding them. I see one, I see two. Alright. Okay, so here's our copper crush washers, if you will, or crush seals for the exhaust. So here's the exhaust. Going to fit up like this, but I need to do a little cleanup on it. It's a stock exhaust. It's a little bit worn out in areas as far as the chrome is concerned, but I'll try to polish it up a little bit and see how good I can get it before I actually put it on. Alright, we got the exhaust polished up as much as this exhaust can be polished up. It is an old pipe. Would like to find the left side pipe because this one is pretty worn out as far as the chrome is concerned. The finish is pretty much shot. Either we could re-chrome it or we can go ahead and get a replacement. I'd like to find a replacement and maybe re-chrome the one pipe later. But for right now, it will have to do. And those exhaust springs are a little bit of a tight fit. See if I can get them in there. Nice tight fit. That looks pretty good on that side. Alright, those are pretty much seated in place. We'll get the collar on. Got a bolt for the rear to hold it up when I get it in place. Need to put the collars in place onto the exhaust pipe itself. On so I could support it a little better. Alright, make sure those are in place. Collars in position. Okay, that's the collar. Get a couple nuts on it. Hopefully you guys can still see that. this one. And that is 2 started. Let's get this other side here on. It kind of spun a little bit here. See if I can get them back in place. That looks pretty good. I'll just get a couple nuts on it so I can make sure everything's lining up properly. And I can't see this nut at all here, so I'm just trying to do it blind. I think I got it. All right, I'm gonna have to take a look in there. Let me go to the other side. I'd like to do this side here first, I think. And just checking to make sure the color is in place properly. And that's looking pretty good. That looks pretty good. Just double checking bolts underneath. Missing a screw here on the exhaust. I'll have to see if I have that. I'm pretty sure I probably do. Alright, so that is the exhaust. I'm going to tighten up the bolt over here for the gasket. For the exhaust at the center point. So if anybody knows where to get one of these exhausts, the left-hand side, that piece, I'd be happy to know about it. Alright, so that's got that fitted up. So I need to pull the tank off and get the electrical, the horn, the ignition switch, the coil hooked up and condenser. I also need to do the headlight bucket and get that ready to go. Then I need to pull this side cover off and time the motor statically, set the points and set the advance for the timing. Pretty easy procedure on this bike. There's a little fire mark on the flywheel that you basically hook up a light to the points and you wait for it to go on and off at a certain point based on that mark on the flywheel. Alright, I'll bring you back for the next big piece.